Good evening, class. It's the second video of the night. I will be working through the first assignment here, and that's creating our postcard. You may see me come down and click on the pause button from time to time as I readjust, because I am working off the PDF version of the book, and you guys don't need to see me crossing back and forth between the windows. So some of the first things that they talk about within that beginning chapter is just some things that we can do with the zoom tool. There are multiple ways of getting around our drawing here, our picture here. The zoom tool is down here, or you can type in Z. So if I hit Z on my keyboard, automatically highlights that button. So notice that there's the plus on this little magnifying glass now. If I just click somewhere, it magnifies it by a certain percentage, and I continue to go up. So it's 100% right now on the bottom. Click on it again, it's 200%. Click on it again, 300, 400, 500. Right click gives you another option menu. The right click command, the right click tool will give you something different for everything that we have. So if I want to bring it back to the way it was, fit on screen. If I also want to go to zoom out, it'll zoom out at a certain percentage as well. But the fit on screen will always bring you back to fit whatever image will be. It'll fit the whole screen as it can. There's also where you can left click, hold, and drag down to the right, and it will continue to increase in size. Notice as the closer you get in, that's when you start seeing the individual pixels of the photograph. There is just a couple of options that we had there. We can also, at our options menu up above, remember there's all these different things up here. So Scrubby Zoom was the one where we can drag it, and it does that. If you don't have Scrubby Zoom clicked, fit screen again, it will now zoom to a window if that's what you prefer. And that's actually what I prefer too. Scrubby Zoom gives you a little less control. I like to control where I want to zoom. And again, fit screen is kind of always goes back to your default. Some other things that we can look at when we move up to here is, I prefer to leave my toolbar in a single column, but if you so choose, you can click on this double arrow up the top and it moves it into a double arrow. It kind of just expands it out. It does allow you, if you so choose, to move another toolbar beneath there, but I still prefer a larger working space rather than a wider toolbar. Granted, it may only be like a centimeter thick that it adds to it, but your drawing space and your workspace is going to be very valuable, and as you get into some more complex projects, this space is going to be taken up with more and more increasing objects and just being more complex in nature. We briefly talked about it, but another way of adjusting your zoom is just to come down to the bottom left here. You'll see that it's there. If you don't adjust it there, let's come back and click on the zoom again. We can change your settings here. There's no tool presets. We can, instead of this, we can make sure it's always minus. So this is defaulting to zooming in, but you can default to zooming out, and so on. But this gives you your current screen percentage. If I wanted to, I can click on it, double click on it, and adjust the size down here as well. Now, as you're working through this, notice that under the layers panel on the right, you've got ribbons and you've got rows. So it wants to make sure that rows is selected. So click on rows, click on the image of rows, and now it highlights everything here. The next part that it's asking us to do is to look at the adjustments for the rows. And as we come through the adjustments, it should be right above your layers here. We've got brightness and contrast, levels, curves, exposure, vibrance, and so on. Just go through, and as you hover over them, they'll all adjust. If I click on brightness and contrast, now it has changed. So it's looking at your brightness and contrast. Notice from the adjustments tool, it went to properties because we are now adjusting the properties of this photograph. I do want to bring up a caution right now before I go too far is I often use the Alt tab to go between windows, and if you accidentally click tab on its own as you're working in Photoshop, it will shut down everything. And don't panic, because if you hit tab again, it will bring it back. So for example now, what it wants us to do is just take the brightness tab and move it. There's 19. As you move the slider on each of them, you'll see how it adjusts. And same thing with contrast. You can also, if you know your values, you can enter them in. If you want to be more accurate, then this is where we would want to do it at. And tab, at this point, will tab between the two boxes. So I'm going to bring it back to 0 the way that it was, and then we'll move forward from there. Another thing to look at is now we've made an adjustment. As we change the adjustments, so when I went to adjustments, I had levels, I had curves. So if I go back to properties and I click on rows, every adjustment that I do to it gets added above that existing layer that we did. So I added a level accidentally, but there's my brightness and contrast. So I don't want the levels. I should never have even created that. So what I need to do with that is select that and delete that. The layer mask will be going away now. All I cared about is, still want to delete this too. Yes. All I want is the brightness and contrast. So let me go back to my properties on that. Click on that, click on this, change my brightness to, let's say, this. I've changed it a little bit, but now if I want to just remove that adjustment that I did, I click on the eyeball here, and it goes away like it's never been done. Bring that back to 0 again, and it doesn't really affect. You'll notice that there's no change as I turn it on or off. You can also freeze or thaw. It's kind of like AutoCAD where you can click on it here. Same thing as here. As long as it's highlighted, you'll see it's highlighted here as one of your adjustments. Now this is the very end of the beginning of this assignment, and it comes in 2, possibly 3 parts, and we'll continue to work through these. But it does say that if you are done with something in the transform, you can double click on any of these and it kind of will collapse them and bring you back to your layers. If you want to open it back up, just double click it again. Same thing with the adjustments. Double click and bring it back out to collapse them. You can extend these out a little bit more if you so choose as well, kind of like any other Windows or software command. If you find the double arrow, you can move it to the left, right, up, down to increase the size of that panel. At this point, it is important to start saving your files and using the same naming convention that I've told you guys the entire class from the beginning on the first day you started, is that I will do it here as well. We're going to go File, Save As. I'm going to save it on my computer, save it on my E drive, my removable drive, Photoshop Files, and 01_working. So you see the last time I did this was back in 2021. So what I might do is just create a different folder, 2022. And I'm going to click on 01_working_Eric, but then I'm going to save it here. So make sure you name your files with an underscore, your name. It helps distinguish it from everybody else's in your class. Now that that's been done, we are ready to move on to adding the ribbons on the next part of the assignment is we're going to open up these ribbons. So if you make it visible now, we're going to see a ribbon that comes up here. Happy birthday. So we got a blue ribbon on it. What it also points out in the book, the textbook, is this is our foreground or background color and our foreground color. So set background color and set foreground color. By default, Foreground is usually black and background is usually white. That's done by default. We are going to create another ribbon down below and use this ribbon to sample its color. What we need to do next is to make this ribbon layer active. So I'm going to click on ribbons. Now this is gray and it's also got a white box that's highlighted around it and it has made it active. So now we're going to go to our eyedropper tool and we are going to sample this color, which is going to picture the reason they call it an eyedropper is because what can you do with that? Well, as you squeeze the tip, it sucks in a liquid within that eyedropper and it allows you to move it to another place. So the eyedropper tool is here, or click on eye, but I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to find an area of this that I like. I like that slightly darker blue. As I click on it, notice that my foreground color has changed to blue. Our next step is going to be to create our own little rectangular ribbon using the marquee tool. And first of all, it wants us to zoom in to the lower third of the card. So there's, again, use your zoom tools that we've learned, or what I also like to do, and it's for me, it's an easy way, is hold down Alt and you can use your scroll bar to zoom in. And then your scroll bar also can zoom up and down. So now we're at the location of where we could put in our marquee tool. Now we want to try to get as close as we can to the book, but it does not have to be perfect. Do not spend too much time trying to make it look identical to the book. Again, use your own judgment here. So I'm just going to come in, this looks roughly here, and I'm going to create my marquee tool like this. I've got that set up, the marquee box, and we'll continue with the next step, and this will end up being shaded blue here shortly. Now, once you get the marquee tool drawn, we're going to click on the brush tool now, which is right here. And remember that we can adjust the size of the brush up here. Right now it's at 13. If we do click down, we can move that size up a little bit if we so choose. And this is where it's going to, we can draw that in. Now the larger it gets, the easier and quicker this goes. Notice that because it was a marquee tool, it doesn't allow us to draw outside the lines. So it kind of gives us the easy route on that. So now I've completely filled in my marquee box with the blue color. Once you're done highlighting that, you click enter or go back to the move tool, kind of gets you back out of that. And actually that's kind of funny that it's not working. It should have automatically just closed that command down. Try something different here. So right now it's deselected. If you have it selected, this is the part that I had forgotten, and it doesn't work to just click back out of it. All you need to do is go up to select and deselect, and now the marquee box, the highlighted little dash box around it is gone, but we have our current box here, which is exactly what we want. And remember to save often, save often, save often. The next step is to take a little bit of a chunk outside of this box. We're going to create a little inverted triangle within here to give it that flag look, similar to this up here. It's just going to be done on the opposite side. What's going to ask us to do is come up here to the lasso tool, and what it wants is the polygonal lasso tool. And so we're going to just draw in a line. So we're going to click here. It does not have to be perfect. Click here and back to the beginning. And we've got our triangle that we are going to remove from this box. Now that we've got this triangle drawn in there, all we have to do is, if it's highlighted, hit delete. That did not work the way it was supposed to, probably because I paused it at one point. I am back to it. That was a little bit messy there. moving it, and I don't want to do that. There's a bunch of things that I just have done wrong. I'm going to hit Control Z until that is gone, and I'm going to redo that command without pausing the video, so there's no mistake done. There, that is now deleted without pausing it. I got rid of that local area, and I can click on my outside that, do a select, deselect, and notice that it's a little bit messy. And so I want to adjust that if possible. In fact, I don't think I can. So I think what the book mentioned for us to do, doing that again, is I want to undo that again. Undo. What makes it easier is if you start a little bit outside to the of the rectangle and then bring it inside. Try to go across that because you're still going to knock out that whole piece, but you're not going to have a bar left on the left side, which is the mistake that I made. So select, deselect. I no longer have that issue. It's still not as clean as I would like, but if I need to, what I'll do is recreate another smaller one and see if that makes it any better. Looks a little cleaner. It's not perfect, but again, we're not intending to be. The last step in the process is to create some text for this. So we're creating a happy birthday, but who are we saying happy birthday to? So go to the horizontal text, brings up a different menu here. Book asks us to use 32 font, so we can come down, there's no 32, so we can create on that. Or just double click again and type in 32 and enter. And you can choose whatever font you want at this point. Gives you different samples here. I'm going to try this one, and I'm going to click in here, and it gives me a box, and I'm going to say happy birthday to, and it may take you a couple times on this just to get it located correctly. Happy birthday, I'll say Aragorn. I was thinking Lord of the Rings for some reason. When you are finished with that, I'm going to click out of it, and Aragorn is actually stuck behind it. So we need to find and bring that text to the forefront. One of the things I forgot to do, which is not a big issue, but remember, if my foreground color was blue, my text that I created was blue. What I should have done, according to the book, which is not too late to do it, if you did forget, then this is a good way of following up. The text is still highlighted. I need to click on swatches and notice that it still says it's blue. I'm going to click on the swatches and I want to change my color. So let's see here, color. Let's take it to a green color. Let's see here. It's not working as easily as it should. So these are the only swatches that I've got loaded up, and I was able to go to color, change it here, and then bring it back to swatches. There's a swatch, and I was able to eyedrop that to change my font to a different color. The book says to choose yellow. You could match it to this if you so choose. In fact, I could eyedropper. Where did my eyedropper go? Right here. And sample the yellow again. And then change my font to the yellow color. and match what it is up above. I will leave that because it's more similar to what the book is showing. Again, I'm going to save my file and move on to the last few steps. One thing I'd like to point out that the book did that didn't really work for me because it wasn't showing already is that you can click on these bars up here and you've got large thumbnail, small list, large list. So large list, small list, nothing's really changing on any of this. The book's showing you how it would expand out. If I click on RGB, I can also just use the standard RGB colors. Here's your CMYK, grayscale, all of these that we have to choose from, and you can eyedrop any of those colors at any time. And then if you want to add them as a swatch, that's when you could right click and import swatch, and it would be placed up on here. So we are actually complete in this first assignment. Everything has been done according to the textbook. We have actually created some very simple text, very simple shape. We also cut out part of that very simple shape using a lasso polygon tool. And we can always undo things using Control Z or coming up to edit and undo. And if you hit Control Z, it'll undo multiple times at once. And so at this stage, the only thing I would say is that you'd want to come through and go back and start changing some of the things that we might want to do. So properties, that's not bright enough for me. I want to make it a little brighter, something that'll look better. Maybe add a little bit of contrast. And commit to it, save it, and that is the end of the first assignment.